On this episode of the podcast, I have with me Arie Polycarpou. He is the manager of digital analytics and A/B testing at Total Wine & More. We're going to be talking about what goes into, his world. It's all about A/B testing. We're going to be talking about size of tests, ROI of tests, relationship with product management, why testing has grown to be so important. Arie's been doing this for a while. He's got a deep background in this, and I'm really excited to have him on. Arie, thanks for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Very excited to be on.
Awesome. I always ask for two things to kick off the episode. One is, I think everyone will know what Total Wine & More does, but just to hear from your standpoint what the company does. And then secondly, just what are your responsibilities there as the manager of data analytics and A/B testing, which is a nice mouthful.
Total Wine is a retailer of alcohol. So mainly a majority of business is wine, but especially that we sell beer, spirits, non-alcoholic, seltzers, everything you can think of. So we're in 25 states. In certain states, we have a huge presence like California and Texas. And others are markets we're just kind of getting into as well. So we have about 250 stores in 25 states.
Nice. I frequent one close to my house, so I'm very familiar.
Nice.
And what, in terms of your responsibilities, maybe a little color in terms of what you do there as the digital analytics A/B testing manager?
Yeah. So in my role, I can actually give a little bit of history of my role with the company. So I got brought in June 2020. So that was kind of in the heart of COVID, where a lot of people were scared to go out and bars were closed. Total Wine, especially digital, really took off as more people were buying alcohol and drinking at home. So I think digital grew multiple fold. So they, wanted to bring people in to help, grow and measure the business at a larger scale. So I got brought in to kind of focus and revamp the A/B testing process. So they were doing A/B tests before, but like kind of at a smaller scale, but be able to be brought in, build in a process where we can have an intake, prioritization, and then solid measurement across not just the product team, but also the merchandising team and marketing team. So that's what I got brought in to do and put that in place. And then now my role's kind of expanded. I also do just general business analytics, working with stakeholders to answer business questions, understand features, how they're performing, and general reporting as well. So we have a greater digital analytics pyramid, and then my role, and it's more the customer facing aspect or business partner facing aspect of all that. And A/B testing is still a huge part of that.
Awesome. I guess, you were brought in to help, beef up the A/B testing. I mean, what was in place when you got there? Was it a case that it was pretty greenfield, or was there established, process and methodologies and you were there to maybe improve it?
Yeah. So I know before I came, there's a team that was working on it. I think some people left, new people came in place. And then I think, they just wanted a new person to kind of lead up that effort and make it a big priority. And before, I know it was mainly within just the product team, and the product team would do tests and then reach out to analytics to help support. And then now it's just, I think as the business grew and other areas and, departments grew as well, they wanted, to be a little bit more data forward, and A/B testing was a big part of that.
And what does, when it comes to A/B testing, maybe can you provide some depth in terms of what that means in Total Wine? Like, what does that encompass and what is being considered within those tests?
Yeah. So the way I like to describe A/B testing is there's traditional analytics where you kind of see especially with a website, you see what customers are doing and then you report on it. And usually to understand if something's doing good or bad with that, you have to do either like a pre-post analysis or find a comparable segment that's not exactly how you want it. But with A/B testing, you have you can have multiple, but you're basically showing at the same time period to the same audience of customers. You're splitting them into traffic and seeing how does one group respond versus the other. So in essence, that's how I just like to describe it, is like split traffic measurement. And most of it, especially as we've been getting started, is kind of A/B or ABN. So one versus multiple experiences. But then there's also MVT testing and levels of like personalization and machine learning capabilities with other tools that you can be used as well. But most of it is, just seeing how different customers, how the same group of customers, putting them up and see how they respond to something that we put in front of them.
How granular, from the perspective of, you're trying to optimize, the traffic, the conversion, how granular can a test get?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, there are times we're doing whole site redesigns and they want to see what it is, but those are not usually my favorite tests to run because there's so many things moving in place and changing. And I understand why you can't slowly test into a whole redesign sometimes, but It can be as big as that, or it can be as simple as, I know, like an algorithm change. So like if a customer is searching something on the website, showing them like one algorithm versus another, like whether it's two different, like an in-house algorithm versus a new algorithm, or even like if you have an in-house algorithm and your big data team wants to test, should we use this logic or this logic, and seeing how that performs. Or, I mean, it can be as simple as like an aesthetic change, or as big as like a whole new feature that's developed, and how do customers interact and respond with it.
And you guys are in 25 states. So obviously, as you're kind of thinking through the A/B test, does demographics, like region by region testing, change? Because obviously consumer behavior might be different, or what might be appealing to someone in California versus, another state potentially.
Yeah. So I've been in B2C kind of before this, and in multiple states as well. And you see some things with regional, especially if it's like a clothing retail, obviously what's selling in one state might be different in others, and just what appeals to them. And you do localizations. With alcohol, there's the additional effect that there are 50 states in this country, and all of them have different alcohol laws. So yeah, this is sometimes a little harder, and there's things we can do in certain states versus others, not to mention things we can sell in certain states, whether we can offer coupons or not, or offer a discount. So yeah, there's a lot of nuances. So we usually look at that. If it's something like a general site change, like something that we're doing like aesthetically to keep a consistent brand, then we'll look at it more holistically. But if it's, like something that is like, it was showing this coupon in a different manner, like that's something we can only do in certain states. But if it is something we're doing in every state, then we'll look at it by segments and see how do these different segments respond to this in the greater group.
I guess it's a curiosity. I mean, might not be a factor, but I mean, if you're looking at California versus a cold weather state, I guess parts of California could be cold, but Southern California specifically, let's say, and then you're looking at seasonality, because obviously, what could be a mild winter here is freezing in Buffalo. The alcohol choices could be different, because obviously when it's colder, you might want something different than when it's 60. I mean, that's got to be an interesting wrinkle when obviously, that information is different, but obviously that has you thinking of more granular tests per region. Even I'm assuming it's got to be a lot more to structuring that test, because obviously all those little factors are going to play in.
No, that's a great question. So there's definitely so much that can be done with localizations, and our stores do a great job, right? Like the stores cater to a very specific, area or metro. Usually in certain metros, we have several stores, and they're able to really personalize to that group, whether it's related to like a big game that's coming up for that sports team. Like we don't have any stores directly in the Cincinnati area, but if we do, I'm sure there'd be a lot going on for the Super Bowl versus not. But I think with digital and having so many different areas, and then when you split it out into certain stores or markets, you get really granular. So it's going to be really hard in terms of the level of effort that we're doing to really like concentrate on just a few stores, or like a 20th of our demographic or market. It can be, I think it's the balance, right? It's like, where do we spend our time and effort? The bigger initiatives that can affect more people, or something that would just affect California. But we've done initiatives for that. And I know, especially with California and the Napa Valley and Northern California is a huge premium market. So we do, localization efforts for there. So we've been, trying to promote local as well. We know there are certain states that are bigger on beer. A lot of states in the South are bigger on whiskey. So we'll push that a little bit more forward and get them to try maybe some local things as well. So we do it at scale. It's just, when looking at the other priorities, we have to keep in mind the size.
Absolutely. I guess when you're kind of looking at, this is driving a lot of business to completion. You want that order. You want to, make every customer more valuable, all the stuff that you're tasked with keeping track of. When you're looking at your relationship with product management, and obviously they have their own vision of where the product's going, they have a roadmap, they're building stuff out. How does your relationship partner with the product team?
Yeah, no, they're an extremely important partner for me kind of throughout my career, but especially with how we're structured at Total Wine. I know for me, like I don't have any front-end developers on my team. So, we can come up with test ideas and do all the statistics to say, this is how long it needs to run, when it needs to run, what pages, but we need someone to help us actually create those experiences. So the product team is just a great resource for that. And they obviously have their own things on their roadmap. Some of the things on the roadmap are just things that they need to do. Like we have a new state we're going into that has X laws, so we got to do this. But others, it's just like, they're trying to build better experiences and create a better experience for the customer. So naturally, they'll reach out to me and be like, we want to run this A/B test. What do we got to do? And then, we have the process in place to be able to intake that prioritize it and get them, get each of us the resources we need to create a great test.
And I guess you mentioned you don't have front end developers, so you're partnering with, I guess, who do you partner to implement the changes that you guys are recommending or you want to test?
Yeah. So a lot of A/B testing tools have something called a WYSIWYG, like what you see is what you get. So we're able to manipulate some small things with that. Or I have some basic CSS and HTML knowledge, but as a non-developer and someone with a background in business and marketing and even a little bit of statistics, and statistics, yeah, I'm not well equipped to make a lot of those site changes. So, we reach out, the product teams each have their own front end development team. So if it's a bigger change or something that will need a release, we'll work directly with the product manager to be like, if it's something they want to do, they'll probably already have it planned in the backlog and scoped. But if it's something that another team's coming to us with and we need some help, we have a great two-way relationship where I can go to them and say, hey, this is something that they want to do. Is this something we can get prioritized in the roadmap within the next X number of sprints?
And I guess as you guys, you set up the tests, I'm sure you pick the metrics you're looking to measure. Who decides, who's the final arbiter going, hey, these are the things we're measuring? Is it a partnership with product? Is it your team driving that more?
Yeah. So it can be both. I know there are product managers that if they have very specific use cases or are a little bit more experienced with analytics, they know exactly what they want and what they do. And, I'll be there to say, yeah, that makes sense, or that doesn't make sense. But I think usually our team will take the first pass. We'll take the request. We have an intake form to make sure we have all the data we need. And one of the main questions is, what are you trying to increase? So ultimately, I think it does come from the product team. Just, what are you trying to do? Why are you trying to do it? But we'll kind of help, turn it into statistics and hypothesis testing and be able to be like, okay, primary goal that we're trying to drive is this. We expect to increase. So let's say it's order conversion, but specifically, let's say it's something to get customers to add to cart more. So the thing we're trying to drive directly is add to cart, and that should increase order conversion. But we want to make sure that because we're making an easier experience, we're not dropping our average order value and looking at a lot of other. So ultimately, we're trying to make sure revenue per visitor or revenue per visit is strong, but there's so many metrics at play. So try to balance that all. And technically we'll look at everything, but really understanding what's the main goal we're trying to drive with this and what is it directly driving. That's important.
I guess you're obviously setting up the metrics you're capturing, partnering with product to actually put the results into action. Maybe when the test is done, what happens for you guys at that point?
Yeah. So I know, especially it's something that is one of the biggest benefits of having an A/B testing program is trying to keeping track of everything that's been tested and then seeing where it's at. So yeah, we have our directory of tests. And then once a test is complete, our team will put together the results where we recap the business summary, the experience, and then show tables and then analyze and provide feedback. And then we always provide a recommendation saying, based on the data available, this is what we recommend. And sometimes there's a certain experience that teams develop and they put a lot of effort into, and it makes sense for other initiatives that might be later in play that even if it's a flat experience and we see no significant difference, it might still be worth implementing. So we try to keep that context as well. But with our recommendation, we always want to give a go forward. And sometimes the recommendation is we need to retest over a different time period or, test again or make a small tweak. But we provide that recommendation and then we have a meeting with our stakeholders to say, this is what happened. This is the data and our recommendation based off the data. And then do you agree with it? And then if so, what do we do? And if not, also please let us know. And what do we do next? And if it's a win, a clear win that we know we for sure want to do, what do we need to do to make it a permanent part of the site? So that is always a product team is very involved with, and a partner. It's is this something we can kind of turn on right away? Or is it you guys that would have to make it permanent, provide do a little bit more work to make it go in?
Interesting. I guess when you mentioned, you're making the recommendation and obviously there's a repository of these recommendations. Do you guys direct the product team to go back and look through those? Because obviously there might be similar tests run and it's if it's pretty similar, go take a look at what we've done. And if it's not, if there's some, unique requirement or something that you do need to address, we'll go do it for you. Does that come up a lot or that doesn't?
It does. Yeah. And I think I've been at the company in my current role for about 1.5 years now. So I think we're starting to get to that. There's always a cycle, I think, where, as we're trying to look at optimizing the site and doing conversion rate optimization, it's we come up with things that we want to try. And then there's, people that younger in the company might have not realized what I did when I first started. And then, yeah, well, we have a nice directory where we can go look it up. And I know we use personally Jira to look up and see, all the past details and the results and the experience. But then, yeah, there are people before me too that were like, we did this before you were here. And, various levels of tracking. But I want to make sure, at least for me, when I move into another role, at least all that stuff is there so they can do that. And there gets to a point where just because something maybe worked 3 years ago, it's not going to work now. Like the industry is continuously changing. Mm-hmm. And I think it's definitely worth testing again over a different time period. Our customer base is changing. So, it can still be worth it, but at least you have that previous point to be like, this is what we did before, why it worked, why it didn't work. And hopefully, use that as continuous learning and not a learn in the moment, leave it and have to do it all over again 2 years later.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously with you joined in the midst of the pandemic. So it will be interesting to see when somebody goes through that repository at some point, 35 years down the road, and they're like, this looks like an anomaly versus everything we've seen until they realize, human behavior was skewed for a little bit of time there.
Yeah, I actually can't imagine. For me, I joined at but even honestly, since I've started, we've seen the business behavior of people change. There are a lot of customers that are now going back to store, or customers that previously were only store shoppers started to buy online from us and now are both. So they might have different, and yeah, just interesting to see what are they buying online versus in store. And it's just, so much is changing right now. And I think probably a lot of people in this kind of field and position can relate to me that it's hard to really understand, what's going to be consistent behavior. What's the new normal is something we use a lot.
Absolutely. A question I asked, I had somebody from Anheuser-Busch on analytics department. We were talking about, different type of experiences that tie to alcohol and trying to tie that into consumer loyalty, and obviously trying to measure that, through various, metrics. Like when it comes to what you guys are saying, you mentioned two different behaviors. Obviously, the experiences are shifting. Are you guys trying to have a situation where you're trying to, understand that consumer behavior project, or is it more of a, hey, they've already made this purchase and based on that, we have a limited life cycle because the behaviors are changing so fast?
So my experience has always been more just what are customers doing on our website and the web customer. But we are definitely very interested in seeing customers overall. And we have a whole customer analytics team. And there's even someone on our team that does more what we call advanced analytics and do that mapping over time, creating cohorts with different customers. And just seeing behavior tracked over a longer period of time than just on the website. So I think more and more we've been doing that. And that's kind of, the full 360-degree view of the customer and seeing what they're doing on different spaces. And we can see a lot easier, what customers are doing at Total Wine, but then also incorporating things from a lot of customers now are using DoorDash and Uber Eats to order their alcohol. So seeing, that kind of data is a little harder to match up and get third-party data. But, trying to see just holistically, what are these customers doing? Because we know these customers are, doing a lot of things all over the internet, searching, coming from Google, maybe comp shopping versus other places. So it's there's a lot of data out there. And I think there's still so much that can be done and exciting to see.
Absolutely. For your team, or maybe this is you or somebody else on your team, but who spends some time forward thinking about, new technologies, new strategies, thinking of new models? Who on your team is responsible for that?
I think in a strong team and organization, it's kind of everyone from the top to bottom, right? Is thinking, how can we improve? What's going on in the industry that we can take on? Are there other tools that can help us with this? So it's all of us. I know with the pandemic and just the day-to-day life of work, it can be hard to take that step back and think this is something we need to we need to do this. But I think especially as companies grow, you need to do that more and more. So I'm trying to find ways for both myself and my team to kind of be able to take a step back and be what's the next step for us? What are some more advanced testing methodologies we can use? And then identifying use cases, whether that's something we already have in our roadmap and using it as a pilot, or working with the right team to come up with use cases. So we're doing that. And I think ideally it's better, we want to keep up with it as best as we can. So it's a great question, but I think it comes from everyone. And I think in my position, I try to be a leader in that as well.
Absolutely. I guess I was curious, final question. So when you guys are coming up with the recommendation, obviously it goes to the product team. When you're looking at the speed and urgency of getting some of these changes into place, and you're looking at timelines to get those recommendations out and then implement, how fast do you potentially go through the whole process, the life cycle of, setting up the whole project from soup to nuts? Like, is it days, weeks, months?
Great question. And it very much depends. I mean, I think it can depend on a lot of things, like including who is it coming from? Is this from, senior leadership, executive leadership level versus something like, we've had this on our roadmap for a while and we want to try. So I think within a request, we want to make sure, I think I've always tried to pride myself traditionally on speed, right? Like with a team, we can fully dedicate this and just try to knock it out of the park. Like, give it to us in a day and we'll try to knock it out do everything we need to set it up and get it live at like a week later and then let it run for however long we need. And test depends on, the size of the sample that you're doing, what their conversion rate is and what the metric you're trying to do, but run it as soon as possible and then have the results turned around in a couple of days. But realistically, like you're going to make a lot of issues that way and mess up. So I think, ideally we'd like to keep a week's buffer and at least, tell our business partners we have a lot going on, especially as our team has been taking on more. So, give us a few weeks and we just want to so it can be anywhere from usually 1 month to 2.5, 3 months if it's a test that needs to run a while, I think, to get straight to your point and answer your question. But a lot of things are in play. And I think a lot of it too is just making sure we have the time to do the right analytics and do the right calculations we need and, have the right back and forth with the stakeholders to make sure it's the right experience out there. And if it's something that's especially a net new, totally different experience, get UX involved as well to cooperate on that.
I mean, it certainly sounds like an exciting job, obviously. Keeping you on your toes and no end for challenges. I was going to say, thanks for being on and chatting with us. If someone does want to reach out and talk about anything in particular that you mentioned on the podcast, what's a good way to get a hold of you? LinkedIn is good or alternative?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is probably the best way. So I think, my name will be on the podcast.
Show notes. Yeah, I got you on that one.
Good.
And no, thanks for being on, man. I appreciate it. It was great having you on. And that's it for this episode. We'll be back again, different guest, different topic. And until then, I always ask for two things. One, send me a message on LinkedIn. Let me know if you want me to talk about a specific topic. I'll certainly do my best. And I do appreciate everyone that is always sharing these podcast episodes. It's all been organic growth. And thank you for doing that. And until next time, goodbye.